something interesting about the past tense in English. It isn't just grammar, it's the language of memory. The way you talk about who you were, where you came from, what life used to look like before it became what it is now. And for many English learners, this is one of the hardest switches to make. Not because the rules are difficult, but because talking about the past requires you to think differently, to reach back, to describe something that no longer exists in a language you're still building. Today, we practice it the natural way, through story. By the end of this episode, you will know how to talk about your childhood, your hometown, and your memories, using used to, the simple past, and the kind of language that makes the past feel real. This is day 20 of your 30-day English journey. Day 20. 10 days left. This series exists for one reason: to take you from A1 to B1 through listening. Not through grammar tables or vocabulary lists, but through stories told at a pace you can follow with words that stay with you. Every episode is one more layer of fluency. Yesterday, Sarah landed in Boston and checked into her hotel on Newbury Street. She had 4 days ahead of her, no deadlines, no client emails, just the city, her sketchbook, and time. Today is Tuesday, her first full day in Boston, and today she meets someone, a stranger, who becomes, for a few hours, something more than that. Let's go. Sarah woke up slowly. The room was still dim, the curtains were thick, and only a thin line of light came in along the edge. She could hear the city below, quiet and unhurried. A delivery truck, a pigeon, someone's footsteps on the pavement. She lay there for a moment, looking at the ceiling. She had slept well, better than she had in weeks. No alarm, no notifications, just sleep, and then waking, slowly, in a room that smelled faintly of cedar and clean linen. She got up, pulled back the curtains, and stood at the window. Boston in November. The rooftops were dark red in the morning light, the same brick she had seen the night before, but warmer now, with the low winter sun catching the surface. The church steeple rose above everything. The small park below was empty, except for a man in a coat, sitting on a bench, reading a newspaper. She made herself a coffee from the small machine on the desk, took it back to the window, and stood there for a long time. She had no plan for the day. That thought, usually uncomfortable, felt different here, like a gift. She opened her sketchbook and wrote 3 words at the top of an empty page: walk, look, draw. An hour later, she was outside. She walked without a destination. Back Bay, then along the Charles River, then into the South End, a neighborhood of narrow streets and brownstone buildings, small restaurants, art galleries tucked into ground floor spaces. She stopped at a café on a corner. It was small, maybe 8 tables, a long wooden counter, a chalkboard menu on the wall. The kind of place that smelled like butter and coffee and something baking. She took a table by the window and ordered a latte and a slice of apple cake. The cafe was quiet. A few people working on laptops, a woman reading, 2 older men at the counter talking to the barista. And then the woman at the next table looked over. She was perhaps 65, with silver hair cut short and a warm, open face. She was wearing a rust-colored coat and had a sketchbook very similar to Sarah's open on the table. She smiled. "Are you an artist?" she asked. Sarah looked down at her own sketchbook. "I'm a designer, actually, but I sketch when I travel." "So do I," the woman said. May I? She gestured toward the empty chair at Sarah's table. Her name was Eleanor. She was a retired art teacher from Providence, Rhode Island, a city about an hour south of Boston. She came to Boston 2 or 3 times a year, she said, just to walk and draw. The light is different here, she said. Older, somehow. Sarah understood exactly what she meant. They talked for almost 2 hours. Eleanor asked questions the way a good teacher does, not to fill silence, but because she was genuinely curious. She asked about Sarah's work, about Brooklyn, about the trip. And then she asked, "Where did you grow up?" Sarah wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "A small town in Ohio," she said. "Granville. You probably haven't heard of it." "I know Granville," Eleanor said, surprised. "Denison University. Beautiful campus." Sarah smiled. "Exactly. That campus. I used to ride my bike past it on the way to school. In the fall, the trees were..." She paused, searching for the right word. "Unbelievable. Every color at once." She hadn't thought about Granville in a while. But now, with Eleanor listening, and the café warm around her, it came back in pieces. Growing up, the years when a person develops from a child into an adult had, for Sarah, meant a town where everyone knew each other's name, where the hardware store had been owned by the same family for 3 generations, where the first snow of the year felt like an announcement. "What were you like as a kid?" Eleanor asked. Sarah laughed softly. "Quiet. I read a lot. I was always drawing." She paused. "I used to carry a sketchbook everywhere, just like now, actually." "Some things don't change," Eleanor said. "I was also a little restless," Sarah added. "Granville is beautiful, but it's small. By the time I was 17, all I wanted was to go somewhere bigger, somewhere with more possibility, I guess." Eleanor nodded. She understood. "My hometown was the same," she said. "I left at 18. Never really went back, not to stay." She looked out the window. "But I still dream about the kitchen in my mother's house, the way the light came through the window in the afternoon." Sarah was quiet for a moment. She knew that feeling too. They ordered more coffee. Outside, the November light shifted, the pale winter sun moving slowly behind a layer of cloud, turning everything softer, more diffuse. The kind of light, Sarah thought, that made you want to slow down. Eleanor talked about her years teaching, the students she remembered, the ones who had surprised her. And Sarah talked about Ohio. She talked about her parents' house, a 2-story house at the end of a quiet street, with a maple tree in the front yard that turned bright orange every October. "Used to" was the phrase she found herself reaching for, again and again. Used to for things that happened regularly in the past but no longer happen. A habit, a routine, a part of life that has since changed. "My dad used to take me to the library every Saturday," she said. "I would take out as many books as I was allowed, 8 at a time, I think. We used to have a vegetable garden in the backyard. My mom grew tomatoes and zucchini and this enormous amount of basil. The whole kitchen would smell like basil in August. And every winter when it snowed, my dad and I used to go for a walk before breakfast. Just the 2 of us. Nobody else was ever outside that early. The streets were completely white and completely silent." She stopped. She was surprised by how clearly she could see it. The snow on the street, her breath visible in the cold air, her father's hand in a brown wool glove. A memory, a picture from the past that your mind keeps, does something to you when it comes back unexpectedly. It makes you feel 2 times at once, the present moment and the moment you're remembering. Eleanor was watching her. "You miss it," she said, not a question. "Sometimes," Sarah said. "Not the smallness, but the simplicity, I guess. The way nothing needed to be figured out yet." She looked out the window at the Boston street. "But I think that's just childhood," she said. "Everyone misses it. Even people who had hard ones, I think. You miss the version of yourself who didn't know yet what was coming." Eleanor raised her coffee cup slightly, the way you might raise a glass to make a toast. "To not knowing what was coming," she said. Sarah smiled and raised her cup. "To Granville, Ohio," she said. They sat together a little longer, not talking, sketching, looking out the window, listening to the café around them. When Eleanor finally stood to leave, she handed Sarah a small card with her name and email address on it. "If you're ever in Providence," she said, "look me up." "I will," Sarah said, and she meant it. She watched Eleanor button her rust-colored coat and push open the café door. A wave of cold air came in, and then the door swung closed, and she was gone. Sarah looked down at her sketchbook. She had drawn Eleanor's hands, the coffee cup, the chalkboard menu on the wall. She turned to a new page and wrote, in small letters at the top, "Granville, October, maple tree, Dad's glove, white streets." She would draw those later. She had time. Today, Sarah spent her first full day in Boston, walking through the South End, stopping at a cafe, and meeting Eleanor, a retired art teacher from Providence. They talked for 2 hours, about art, about teaching, about hometowns, and Sarah found herself talking about Granville, Ohio, the small town where she grew up, the maple tree, the library Saturdays, the winter walks with her dad before breakfast. Let's review today's vocabulary. To grow up, to develop from a child into an adult, also the place or conditions of that experience. A hometown, the town or city where you were born or grew up. A childhood, the period of time when you are a child, your early years. A memory, a thought or picture of something that happened in the past. Used to, a phrase for past habits and routines that no longer happen. I used to ride my bike to school. Possibility, the chance that something could happen, a sense of opportunity. Simplicity, the quality of being simple, uncomplicated, not difficult. To make a toast, to raise a glass in honor of someone or something. Unexpected, something that happens without warning, that you did not expect. Day 20 done. If you finished today's episode, type Day 20 done in the comments. And here's your question. Where did you grow up, and what is one thing you used to do there as a kid? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. Tomorrow is day 21, and everything changes. Sarah is back in Brooklyn, and she has a job interview, something she has been working toward for a long time. Expressing yourself professionally in English is a completely different skill, and tomorrow we learn it together. Keep listening, keep learning. See you tomorrow.